Starting with this file, it's 007, Arrangement and Free Sewing. If you don't have this file, remember to link it with this little plus button. It's not the downward arrow into the little bracket looking thing. This is updating all of the preset files provided by CLO. This is your add button that will link files from anywhere. So when you press this, you'll be able to navigate to wherever you save your CLO files. And remember that you can only upload or link a folder. It has to be a complete folder. You can't link a single file. So you can either add this new file to an existing folder that you've already linked, or you can create a new folder and just put that single file in there. And then you'll be able to choose one of these folders and select open. So when you open it, you have a half of a hoodie in front of you. And what we need to do is create the other half first. So that's easy enough. Let's take our transform pattern tool. That's hotkey A. That's pretty much our basic selection tool for both. When I'm in my transform pattern tool, I'm also in my selection tool for my 3D. So I'm going to right click on a pattern and choose symmetric pattern with sewing. And to stay organized, I like to place these in a particular way. I'm going to place my hood right next to the other side. I'm going to do the same for the front, symmetric pattern with sewing. Again, for the sleeve, I'm going to place the sleeve on the other side of the bodice. The back, I'm going to place with the other side of the back. The cuff can go with the other sleeve. The waistband can go on the other side of the bodice. Then we need another pouch pocket. Boom, there we go. Okay, next we need to get these patterns out of the way. We need to be able to get to our avatar. So I'm going to select all of these in the 2D window by dragging a marquee box around all of them, thus giving me the ability to move all of them at once. I'm going to move them out of the way a little bit more towards the back. Okay, let's get the arrangement points on there. And that's in your vertical toggle menu up here. This is the icon you're looking for, that white half bodice right here, half torso. And come over to the second one that looks like dots for head, hands, and feet. And blue dots will appear. Those are your arrangement points. And let's start arranging some of this stuff. So click off of everything, deselect by clicking in the background. And let's place the hood first. So we need to get a little bit closer. I'm going to take this left side. And when I say left, the directions that I'm using, I'm referring to the left side of the wearer, not what we're looking at, because this would be the right side, right? This is the right, but it's the left side of the wearer. So when I say left hood, that means left side of the wearer. You need to be very, very intentional with your placement of these patterns. So this is an appropriate place for the hood. You can't do back here or too low or even just slightly shifted to the side. You need the absolute best place for your patterns. If you don't have that with the arrangement points, then you need to manually place the pattern with your gizmo. But most of these do. So we're going to place all of our big pattern pieces because we're going to do something else with the small pattern pieces, and I'll show you that in a second. And because these are symmetric, I only placed one side of the hood and the other side automatically went to the corresponding side. Same with the front, same for all these patterns because we just created everything as a symmetrical duplicate. So now I'm going to place the back. And it really is best to be a straightforward perspective to make sure you're getting the best placement that you can. Now I'm going to place the sleeve, and I don't think that there's any difference. I think it's pretty symmetrical. Yeah, well, there's one way that we can check this. So I'm going to go to my pattern, my edit pattern tool, and now let's try show line lengths. So this is 8.33 and we have 8.32. So barely this is a little bit bigger, meaning that this is the back and this is the front. But I don't think that that is enough to really make it make a huge difference. But I do want to use it correctly. So if this is bigger, that means that this is the back side of our cap, meaning that if you haven't sewn before or you're not familiar with stitching garments together, in a sleeve you have, this is the cap, this curve and rise right here that covers the top of our shoulder and our deltoid. I think that's our deltoid, our muscle right there at the top of our arm. And the back side, if this is our shoulder notch, the back side is always a little bit bigger than our front, unless there's a strange sleeve design. But a basic sleeve, set-in sleeve, our back side is a little bit bigger. The length is longer, and we usually have a little bit more space of fabric right here. So what we can do is to know that this is our front side because it's smaller, 8.32 versus 8.33. We can use this weird segment point right here on this side, and this is totally random. I don't know the reason why this segment point is here, but let's just refer to this side right here as the front. So our front has this segment point on the underseam, and that's how we can refer to that. So I'm going to turn my measurements back off, so up here. And let's place then our sleeves. So if this is the front right here, this needs to go on this side, okay? So I'm going to help myself a little bit and rearrange this. This is our front because we see our segment point right here, so that's the front side of our cap. Then this should go to this side. Okay, so now this is on the right side of the wear, this is on the left side of the wear. Let's place this left sleeve on the left side of the wear. Looks like this is our best placement. Okay. And really quick before I get to these patterns over here, I want to change the arrangement just a little bit with these patterns so they're not colliding with the avatar. And I don't need to do much. I just want to get it it is, you want your patterns to be close enough to the body that you're not covering up the blue points. Your patterns should exist in between the avatar's body and the blue points. That's the sweet spot. When your patterns aren't close to the body and you simulate, it can cause a lot of hassle, and it doesn't figure it out very well, and it can start to bunch and do a lot of weird things. So try to get your patterns the best that you can. I'm gonna raise both the front and the back of the bodice a little bit. And maybe bring it out just a tiny bit. All right, let's do the same for this head. We can bring that out or back and up just a little bit. And then the two back pieces, let's do that as well. I actually need to bring that out a little bit. If you can see it colliding with the back arm of the avatar a tiny bit, let's use this axis right here to pull it out just a tiny bit. But now you can't see the blue dots, can you? So if I push it further in, you can see the blue dots, but let's say about right here. I'm trying to find the balance. And remember also that we can go into our project or our property editor and change the offset of our pattern arrangement, so we can sort of uncurl it, if you will, so it's not as close fitting to the body, and we get less collision happening while still staying close enough to the body. Okay, I'm going to stay with this. This guy's a little bit far out. All right, now what we want to do is get our little pattern pieces together, and we're going to use a function called Superimpose for this. Superimpose is really great for small pattern pieces because look at the arrangement points here. Some of these spaces are too far apart to arrange these tiny pattern pieces where we want them. So that's why we can either manually arrange them by using the gizmo, or we can superimpose, and that's a really helpful function, and you'll see why just in a second. So we have 2 cuffs, 2 waistbands, and 2 pouch pockets that need to be applied to this hoodie. These pouch pockets get applied right on top of the bodice on the front, and these are the internal lines that we're going to be stitching to. And remember, you have to have internal lines to be able to stitch something, another layer, to a pattern piece like this. So going right on top, almost like appliquing it on top. So let's do this now. I'm going to get my segment tool, or my segment sewing tool, just my regular one, not the multiple to one, just regular segment. And remember, our stitching has to happen that you're telling the program what direction to sew our sewing relation to. So because I can see my segment marker on this side, I'm telling the program to stitch from this point to this point, starting over here, ending over here. I'm starting over here, ending over here, because my segment point is also on that side. And they are symmetrical, so I did one side and it completed the other one. Now let's do the cuff and the waistband really quick before I show you the superimpose function. So I'm going to do the left side of my cuff and the left side of this sleeve, and this other pair of sleeve and cuff that's already finished. And now we're going to need the free sewing tool, because we have a waistband that needs to get applied to both the front and back of the bodice. And what I mean by that is if this is the center front of our waistband, this is the side seam right here, and this is the center back. So I'm going to apply this top segment to the waist of the front and the back here. And this is how we're going to do it. So with my free sewing tool, I'm going to click once on the left side of this waistband. I'm going to travel past that segment point right there. I do not want to click on that middle segment point. And I'm going to click again at the very end of this waistband. Okay, so that's the first part of our sewing pair. Now I'm going to hold Shift, click on that center front point of the waist, the side seam point, still holding Shift, the side seam of the back, and see how we have a blue dot appear? This is because CLO automatically suggests the direct sewing length. So if we had a 12-inch segment, it wants to sew to a 12-inch area in the second part of our sewing pair. So that's what that suggestion is right there, because our waistband is smaller than the side of our bodice. That's totally fine. We want the waistband to be smaller. We're fitting in a larger section of fabric into a smaller waistband. It's a little bit of ease and it's supposed to be there. So just travel right past that blue dot and go to that center back segment point. Okay, you can let go of Shift now, and both of the waistbands are done now. Okay, great. Now let's go over to the 3D window and superimpose these. So I'm going to get in the right position so I can see everything. I'm going to get my selection tool, that's hotkey A. Now I can select on, and I can see my sewing happening and where my patterns are already assigned to. So I'm going to click on this one cuff, select it, right click, and now I want to say superimpose side. And what these three mean is that if you superimpose to the side, it means that you're just lining up the edge of your cuff to the edge of your sleeve opening. So it just butts it up right next to each other. When you do superimpose over, it puts it right over the area that you've sewn together. And remember, you have to start to be able to superimpose like this. You have to establish at least one sewing pair to do that. So we still need to finish the other sewing sections, the sewing relationships on this pouch pocket, but we have that first one done, that very top one, so it's allowing us to superimpose. I'm going to do the other cuff real quick. So I'm going to right click, superimpose side. Great. Let's do a waistband, right click, superimpose side. And this is the same thing. So the edge, the top edge of our waistband is getting applied right to the edge of the bottom of our bodice. Let's do the same for this last waistband. And now our pouch pocket. So right click, superimpose. Now we want over on this one because we want it to be right on top of this layer. Superimpose over. Same for the other one. Superimpose over. Okay, great. And that's super helpful. It puts it right in the position that it needs to be stitched together. And why that helps so much is because when your patterns are far away, it goes into a big jumbled mess. So the closer they are and the better position they are in relation to each other, the better chance of it not having trouble simulating. Okay, let's do the rest of our stitching. Let's get our segment tool and get the simple stitching pairs out of the way. So just our regular segment sewing. This hood is very simple, and so this is the center back seam or the center seam of our hood. Let's just stitch those together real quick. I'm at the top of the hood on this side. I want to be on the top of the hood on this side. Great, done. Love it. Now let's get this shoulder out of the way. So we've got our HPS right here, our high pointed shoulder. This is our left side of our bodice, our front left. So I'm going to click on the HPS of that front left. Now I want the HPS of our back left. This is our back left. So the shoulder seam right at the top, the high pointed shoulder. Great. Now both of our shoulders are done. Love that. What else do we have that's simple around here? Okay, we can do our center back seam. So real quick, right at the top of the left side and the top of the right side of the back. Great, that's finished. Let's do the cuff real quick. Even though we attach the cuff to the sleeve, we still need to sew the cuff together. Remember, it's a round section that needs to be completed. So I'm going to stitch together the sides of the cuff, starting my stitch at the top. My markers are at the top here, and it already happened to the other side of the cuff because they're symmetrical. We can do the same for the waistband, and if you think about it, this is our center front, and this is our opening, our center front opening, and this waistband is going to extend that opening right here. So this doesn't get any stitching, but these both come around the side seam and to the back of our bodice to stitch together at center back. So we need to sew our center back of our waistband together. So this is our center back of this side, and this is our center back of this side. Okay, I don't think we have any more simple sewing to do. So I'm going to get our free sewing tool and do a little more complicated sewing. Let's finish up our pouch pocket real quick. And so this edge right here, this is the opening of our pocket. We don't want to stitch that down. It needs to stay open and detached from the bodice so a hand can get in there. So we want to stitch, the only thing we have left, we've already stitched this area right here. We want to stitch the rest of it. So from this point down to the corner, to this point, and up to this corner. And that's it. Okay? And you have to go in the same direction, remember. So I'm going to click once. I'm not going to click on any of the other segment points in between my start and finish. Only 2 clicks. So click once, travel, don't click, but click on this one. This is our end. Okay. And now I want to set up the pair. So here's my other side. This one does not click in like the other segment points. So you have to be pretty careful when you choose where you're starting your stitch. So right at this point, I'm going to travel without clicking. No clicking. Oh, it messed up for a second. Let me start over. Here we go. And, oh, come on now. Okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do a free sewing on this corner and do a segment sewing right here. So I'm going to undo that first part of my sewing. I don't want to continue that sewing pair anymore, and I'm going to start over. I just want to do this corner and then we'll do a segment sewing right here if it's giving me trouble. So I'm going to start right here, click, travel, click. Okay, now I want to do up here, I want to click, travel, and click. Okay, just got to think about it for a second. All right, and the only thing we have to do is this part for our pockets now. So I'm going to go to my segment tool, and I'm just going to click at the top part of this segment and the corresponding top part over here. Great. Now everything's finished on the pocket. Okay, cool, 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 cool. Let's get our free sewing tool again. What should we do now? I want to do the side seam real quick, get that out of the way. I don't know what these little segment points are because they don't match up. It's got to be for some reason because somebody created these patterns. But with my free sewing tool, remember that when there's a segment point in a segment, like this dot right here, it breaks up your segment, so you can't do this entire side seam with just segment sewing. Segment sewing is a simple segment to another simple segment just by a single click. But free sewing requires us to click once when we start it and then click again when we finish it. So I'm going to go over here and complete that sewing pair. Great. That side seam is done, and it's done on the other side as well. Let's do we need our sleeve to be set, and we also need to attach our hoodie to the neckline. Okay, so this is our front, remember, because we have our notch right here, or our segment point that signals that this is our front side. And this is a one to multiple action that we're going to do. Because think about it, we're going from the front to the shoulder to the back. We have to go from the front to the shoulder, over to the shoulder, and then back. That's the direction that we need to go in. So I'm going to start with this section on the sleeve cap. I'm going to click once, travel all around this cap, and click one more time to finish it. Now I need to hold shift and start by clicking once at the underarm on the front, click again at the shoulder. I'm still holding shift, click at the back shoulder, and end at the underarm. Look, we have another suggestion, a blue dot coming up saying that don't you want to have a direct sewing relationship, an even length? No, we don't. We need that extra ease in the sleeve cap to sew to our armhole. So do not click on that blue dot. Just click on the regular underarm top of your segment. Okay, now you can let go of shift, obviously. And our sleeve is set. Good. We need to also sew our underseam of our sleeve. So I'm going to start at the top here, click once at the top and at the bottom to finish. And then I'm going to click at the top on the other side and the bottom to finish. Now both of our underseams are done. Now I'm pretty sure this is the last seam that we need to do is attaching our hood to the neck. Okay, so we're starting at the front of our hood right here. This is the front point that is also at the center front neckline of our bodice. And this is a single to multiple. So we need to start this and also start at the front when we move over to our second part of our sewing pair. So let's start here at the front of the hood, click once, travel around, click again at the back. Great. Now I need to hold shift, start at the center front of our front bodice, travel up the neckline to the HPS. I'm still holding shift, and I need to do the back HPS, click once, travel around the neckline and end at the very center back point. Okay, great. Now our hood is attached and the sewing relationship is complete. So let's hide our avatar really quickly. And that's again in your vertical toggle menu. The first one over, that's your avatar. So when I press it, that disappears and it lets me see inside the garment better. So I can see if any of our sewing relationships are tangled or crisscrossed, and that'll tell me something's wrong. So our underarms look good, the cuffs look good. This looks a little bit weird, but it's right. You'll see when it comes together that it's just because this is so far away from the neckline that it looks a little bit crisscrossed, but it's right. Yeah, there might be a little bit of trouble here. But you know what? Let's just try it and see if it messes up, and if it does, we can fix it. Okay, let's bring back our avatar because you don't want to simulate without your avatar. So vertical menu, find this icon with the little white half torso, and the first one over is your avatar. When you simulate with no avatar, your garment will just fall to the floor. All right, let's do this thing. Cool, looks good. No major issues, great. So while it's simulating, you want to check that you can open up the pocket. It should come open. Yeah, there we go. Great, great, great. Okay, I'm going to stop simulating. Well, real quick, I'm going to simulate again, and you can take the hood off, right? I mean, my computer's really thinking hard right now, so it's probably going to have some trouble. But you can judge the fabric, try to flatten out any wrinkles. If you pull too hard, it will pull it right through the avatar body sometimes, so you want to be gentle a little bit and sort of intentional with your maneuvering or trying to manipulate the fabric while in simulation. But this is the only time you're able to manipulate the fabric while it's simulating. So, okay, I'm going to stop simulation now. But what I would like to talk about real quick is, and I'm going to take my, there we go, okay. What I would like to do really quick just as an exercise is to apply some top stitching to those pouch pockets, right? Because that's a common thing. And how you do that, remember, object browser, you have all of your materials that you're using. This is sort of like your BOM, your bill of materials. I can go to this icon right here. That's my top stitching, add. It's going to give me a new top stitch to design. Let's say hoodie stitch. Great, that makes sense. We want to do offset of let's do 1/8. That seems better. Maybe even 1/4. Let's do 1/4. And the offset means just how far away from the edge you want your stitch to be. I want a single stitch count. I want a little bit bigger than 14. Let's go 8. Great. And I want like maybe 120 in there. 120 text, heavy duty. And let me get a color that's going to stand out. Let's do like this dark green. All right. And then I'm already in my top stitch tool, and that's those are the only options that I really want to mess around with. I know what else is in there, but for now, that's all I need. I need a heavy duty, I need a 1/4 inch offset, and I need a color that's going to stand out. So what I want to work with are these patterns. I just want to test out the top stitching for this pattern. I can't apply the top stitching to here, the internal lines, because our top stitching would then be on the outside of our pocket. But when you stitch a pouch pocket or a pouch patch pocket to a garment, your top stitching is on this side, right? So it's going to be on this pattern, and that's what I want to apply to. I don't want my edit top stitch, I want my regular top stitch, and I'm going to have top stitching on this side. And you would actually have top stitching. So think about how you would put this hoodie together. You would have a raw center front hem or edge right here. This whole center front edge would be raw, but you would first, to prepare your front bodice, you would have to apply a finished pocket to the front first, meaning this pocket opening would be finished, however they finished, probably serged and turned and stitched. And then this edge would be turned and you stitch it directly down to the garment. Same with this edge. And that would keep it in place enough until you stitched your waistband and your zipper to your front. So really, only this seam and this seam would get top stitching applied. Now, let's say you were, and real quick to finish that up, you would have your zipper applied to center front after these pieces were prepared, the whole front was finished and the pocket was applied. Your zipper would get applied to center front, and then there would be a top stitch down center front. So that would cover up, that would cross over this top stitch happening, this horizontal top stitch. So there's no need to really apply it to this edge right here. But let's say we did have a piece that needed to have top stitching all the way around this shape, this corner, and we didn't want it to cross each other. We wanted it to be perfectly parallel, like an offset of the shape of the outline. And so really quickly we can see what it looks like here in the 3D window. Okay, 1/4 inch, that's about right. Sure. Okay, but let's say we had a different type of top stitch that we need, and it wouldn't be on this pattern, but you will potentially have a pattern that you need that. So I'm going to grab my edit top stitching tool. I'm going to right click directly on that top stitching. You know it's top stitching because it's bright pink, and because I right clicked I get this menu. I want to delete it. Same with this one, right click, delete. Now in my normal top stitching tool I have this drop down arrow and I want free top stitch. So I can then apply now a continuous top stitch past these points. So I'm traveling past these points. I'm going to click once. I'm going to travel around that corner, and I'm going all the way up to this corner. And that's giving me a continuous top stitch all the way around with no crossing intersection at this corner. So you'll need that for like collar edges and collar points, shirt plackets, because those don't usually intersect. They're just a square stitch as an offset of your pattern outline. So that's how you would do that. Okay. All right, and then this would get a zipper applied to it, which if you want to see that really quickly, we haven't gone over that yet, but Let's get our zipper tool real quick. So this is pretty interesting and can be a little bit finicky. So I've activated my zipper tool, right? I want to start one side of my zipper right here. This is where the hood attaches. Let's see if I can zoom out while I'm still doing this. Yeah. And then I'm going to end it right where I think hoodies usually do go all the way down into the ribbing waistband, but it stops like a little bit before the end. I'm going to go right there. And I think it's done. Oh no. So you need to double click it. There you go. I think I clicked it too many times, so real quick. Start it right where my hoodie meets my center front. I'm going to come all the way down here, double click, and now I need to see where this meets each other better. Okay, right there. And look, it's giving me another dot. You can't see it too well, but let me try to move. Okay. It's giving me another suggestion, that blue dot that popped up, of where to stop my zipper, because it wants to be an exact length with each other. And you need to double click, and it's not listening to me so well. Okay. Come on now. Oh, I just undid it all. Okay, well, that's going to be a different video in a different class, okay? It's a little advanced anyway for right now. If you're stitching this together and it looks good, that's as much as we can ask for today. That's great. Okay, I think that's everything. All right, bye guys.